Abigail watched from afar, her heart a knot of conflicting emotions. A young boy, maybe 5 years old, stood trembling before a man, his face contorted in fear. The man's words, though inaudible, were clearly laced with venom, his posture radiating aggression. Abigail knew that look. She knew the sting of a raised hand, the bite of words meant to wound. It was a scene that played out with agonizing familiarity in playgrounds and parking lots across the city. Parents, if you could call them that, unleashing their frustrations on the most vulnerable among us. Abigail wasn't a vigilante, not exactly. She wasn't driven by a thirst for vengeance or a desire to punish. Her motivations were far more primal, born from a deep-seated need to protect, to shield. She saw herself reflected in the eyes of these children, felt their pain as if it were her own. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that these parents wouldn't change. The cycle of abuse, once set in motion, rarely deviated from its course. Her own childhood was a tapestry woven from neglect and abuse, a landscape littered with broken promises and unfulfilled needs. She carried the scars, both physical and emotional, like badges of a war waged within the four walls of her own home. Those scars were a constant reminder, a silent vow to break the cycle, to ensure that no child endured the horrors she had faced. But her methods were unorthodox, bordering on the illegal. Abigail didn't believe in second chances, not where the well-being of a child was concerned. She believed in intervention, in swift and decisive action. She was judge, jury, and, if necessary, executioner. And in the eyes of the law, her actions were undeniably criminal. But in her heart, she was saving them, one child at a time. Abigail had her process, a meticulous routine honed over years of observation. She was a ghost, a phantom presence in the city's parks and playgrounds. She watched, listened, and waited for the telltale signs of abuse. A harsh word, a shove, a look that spoke volumes. She documented everything, her phone filled with grainy photos and videos, irrefutable evidence of the horrors unfolding before her eyes. She targeted parents who were brazen in their cruelty, those who seemed oblivious or indifferent to the watchful eyes of strangers. Parents who, in their arrogance, believed they were above scrutiny, untouchable. Abigail knew better. She knew the cracks in their facades, the vulnerabilities they desperately tried to hide. She was a master manipulator, able to blend seamlessly into any environment, to become invisible. She'd befriend the children, offering them kindness and attention, slowly gaining their trust. She became the friendly face at the park, the one who always had a kind word and a listening ear. And then, when the time was right, she would strike. Her abductions were meticulously planned, executed with surgical precision. A moment of distraction, a carefully orchestrated diversion, and the child would vanish, spirited away from their tormentors. Abigail would disappear into the labyrinthine streets, leaving behind a trail of whispers and unanswered questions. The disappearances at first were dismissed as unfortunate incidents, tragic accidents in a city teetering on the edge of chaos. A child wandered off in a crowded park, a toddler slipped through an open gate. The police, overwhelmed by a relentless tide of crime, treated each case with a weary sense of resignation. But as the weeks turned into months, a pattern began to emerge, a chilling tapestry woven from coincidence and unsettling similarities. All the missing children came from troubled homes, families plagued by accusations of abuse and neglect. The whispers started, soft at first, then growing louder with each vanishing child. A vigilante, some said, a guardian angel extracting justice from a broken system. The media, sensing a story too sensational to ignore, descended on the city like a pack of hungry wolves. Fear, that potent elixir, permeated the airwaves, seeping into every living room and coffee shop. Parents, once oblivious, now clutched their children a little tighter, their eyes darting nervously at every passing stranger. The city held its breath, united in fear and morbid fascination. Detective John Riley, a man hardened by years on the force, scoffed at the vigilante theory. He'd seen enough darkness to last a lifetime, enough twisted individuals who reveled in the suffering of others. No, this wasn't some avenging angel. This was the work of a predator, a cunning manipulator who preyed on the vulnerable, exploiting their fear and desperation. Riley was relentless, a bloodhound on the scent of a trail gone cold. He immersed himself in the case, poring over witness statements, analyzing surveillance footage, searching for a clue, a thread that would lead him to the missing children. He saw the fear in the eyes of the parents, heard the desperation in their voices. But he also sensed something else, a subtle undercurrent of guilt, a carefully constructed facade of grief. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, a social worker with a conscience and a nagging feeling that something wasn't right. She had files, she said, reports of abuse and neglect that had been ignored, brushed aside by a system ill-equipped to deal with the sheer volume of cases. She pointed Riley towards Abigail, a name that had popped up repeatedly in her research, a phantom presence always lurking on the periphery of these troubled families. As the truth came to light, Abigail was finally freed from her unjust imprisonment. The children, now safe and sound, were reunited with her, their true guardian. The parents, whose sinister plans had been unveiled, were taken into custody, ensuring they could no longer harm anyone. Abigail, with the children by her side, walked out of the courthouse, a symbol of resilience and justice. Please like and subscribe.